Welcome to Little Cardinal Story Time. It is finally February and we have a lot going on this month. Do you know there are several holidays this month that people celebrate here in the United States? Can you think of some of them? We talked about them last week a little bit. Do you know that today is one of those holidays? See, February 2nd. What happens on February 2nd? You're right. This little guy. Do you see him? What is this? Is that a groundhog? It is. Mr. Groundhog, he comes out of his hole, and if he sees a shadow, what does he do? Does he celebrate if he sees a shadow? No. He gets scared. Oh no. And goes back in. And then we are supposed to have 6 more weeks of winter. Well, this morning when Mr. Groundhog woke up, he hopped out of his little hole in the ground. He looked around, and guess what? He saw his shadow. Ah! And he went back in. And so now we have 6 more weeks of winter. And we call this day Groundhog's Day. Okay, so that was one holiday, and it just so happens to be today. But do you know what else is coming up? Valentine's Day, you're right. Have some of you already picked up your Valentine's Day little craft from the library? You have? Great. Those are fun little hogs because we live here in Arkansas and lots of people like the Razorbacks. So we did a little red Razorback that said hogs and kisses. And there's a sweet treat in there if you haven't gotten one yet. What else is coming in February? Do you know? Well, right now we are celebrating Black History Month, and one of the ways we're going to do that is read this book today called Trombone, Shorty, and we'll talk a little bit more about that book in a second. But there is another holiday. So we have Groundhog's Day, which is today, Valentine's Day, which is February 14th, so that's coming up. We have Black History Month that we celebrate all month. Lots of people, that's right, celebrate the Super Bowl, which is on Sunday. Some people think of that as a holiday. And we have another one called Mardi Gras. And so this book today is not only going to help us celebrate Black History Month, it's also going to talk a little bit about Mardi Gras and New Orleans, which is one of the places where Mardi Gras is celebrated the most. So this book is very special. It's called Trombone, Shorty, and it is written by Trombone Shorty himself, Troy Andrews. So his real name is Troy Andrews, but he goes by Trombone Shorty. So do you think you might be able to guess what this book might be about? You're right, it's about him, Troy Andrews, and his trombone. It's also illustrated by the Caldecott Honor winner, Bryan Collier. So not only is this a great book, but it's also got great illustrations and won a couple of awards. So let's start Trombone Shorty. Where are you at? Where are you at? We have our own way of living down here in New Orleans. Remember we talked about New Orleans and they celebrate Mardi Gras? And our own way of talking too. And that's what we like to say when we want to tell a friend hello. So if I saw you walking down the street and I was from New Orleans, I wouldn't go, hey. I would go, where are you at? So that's his way of saying hello to you. Lots of kids have nicknames, but I want to tell you the story of how I got mine. Just like when you listen to your favorite song, let's start at the beginning, because this is a story about music. So he's going to talk to us about how he got his name. But before you can understand how much music means to me, you have to know how important it is to my hometown, my greatest inspiration. So he's inspired by the town he lives in, which is New Orleans. I grew up in a neighborhood in New Orleans called Trombone. Any time of day or night, you could hear music floating in the air. And there was music in my house too. My big brother James played the trumpet so loud that you could hear him halfway across town. He was the leader of his own band, and my friends and I would pretend to be in the band too. So there's his friend, there's Troy and his friends pretending to be in his big brother's band. "Follow me," James would say. And there's James playing the trumpet. There's one time every year that's more exciting than any other. Do you remember what it is we talked about? It starts with an M. Celebrated in New Orleans with parades. You got it, Mardi Gras. Parades filled the streets and beaded necklaces are thrown through the air to the crowd. I love the brass bands with their own trumpets, trombones, saxophones, and the biggest brass instrument of them all, the tuba, which rested over the musician's head just like an elephant's trunk. Wow, look at all those instruments. Bet it sounds loud and awesome. "Where you at? Where you at?" the musicians would call. So they're just saying hello. Look at all those instruments. All day long, I could see brass bands parade by my house while my neighbors danced along. I loved these parades during Mardi Gras because they made everyone forget about their troubles for a little while. And people didn't have a lot of money in Treme, but we always had a lot of music. Looks like everybody's happy and celebrating. I listen to all of these sounds and mix them together just like how we make our food. We take one big pot and throw in sausage, crab, shrimp, chicken, vegetables, rice, whatever's in the kitchen, and stir it all together and let it cook. When it's done, it's the most delicious taste you've ever tried. We call it gumbo. And that's what I wanted my music to sound like. Different styles combined to create my own musical gumbo. How many of you have had gumbo before? You have had gumbo? Did you like it? There's a lot of stuff in there. And that inspired Troy to make his own music. But first, I needed an instrument. The great thing about music is that you don't even need a real instrument to play. So my friends and I decided to make our own. What do you think they're going to do? Well, we might have sounded different from the real brass bands, but we felt like the greatest musicians of Treme. We were making music, and that's all that mattered. Then one day, I found a broken trombone that looked too beaten up to make music anymore. It didn't sound perfect, but finally, with a real instrument in my hand, I was ready to play. Do you see his trombone right there? That's right. Look, they made a drum out of a cardboard box. What else did they do? Well, the next time the parade went by my house, I grabbed that trombone and headed out into the street. My brother James noticed me playing along and smiled proudly. "Trombone Shorty," he called out because the instrument was twice my size. "Where you at?" The trombone, do you see how long it is? Can you see how long? So long that it was almost twice the size of Troy. So his brother James called him Trombone Shorty. From that day on, everyone called me Trombone Shorty. I took that trombone everywhere I went and never stopped playing. I was so small that sometimes I fell right over to the ground because it was so heavy. But I always got back up, and I learned to hold it up high. I listened to my brother play songs over and over, and I taught myself those songs too. I practiced day and night, and sometimes I even fell asleep with my trombone in my hands. There he is. He's sleeping in bed with his trombone. One day, my mom surprised me with tickets to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, the best and biggest festival in town. We went to see Bo Diddley, who my mom said was one of the most important musicians of all time. As I watched him on stage, I raised my trombone to my lips and I started to play along. He stopped his band in the middle of the song and asked the crowd, "Who's that playing out there?" Uh-oh, do you think he's going to be in trouble? He's playing during their concert. Everyone started pointing, but Bo Diddley couldn't see me because I was the smallest one in the place. So my mom held me up in the air and said, "That's my son, Trombone Shorty." "Well, Trombone Shorty, come on up here," Bo Diddley said. He's getting invited onto the stage. The crowd passed me overhead as I was standing on the stage next to Bo Diddley himself. I walked right up to the microphone, held my trombone up high in the air, ready to blow. "What do you want to play?" Bo Diddley asked. "Follow me," I said. There he is. There's Troy, Trombone Shorty. He's playing the trombone on stage with Bo Diddley. After I played with Bo Diddley, I knew I was ready to have my own band. I got my friends together and we called ourselves the 5 o'clock band because that was the time we went out to play with each other every day after finishing our homework. So they have real instruments, they have a real name, they're starting to sound like a real band. We played all around New Orleans. I practiced, and soon my brother James asked me to join his band. And when people wondered who the kid in his band was, he'd proudly say, "That's my little brother, Trombone Shorty. Where you at?" And now I have my own band called Trombone Shorty and Orleans Avenue, named after a street in Treme. Remember, that's where he was from, Treme? I've played all around the world, but I've always come back to New Orleans, and when I'm home, I make sure to keep my eyes on the younger musicians in town and help them out, just like my brother did for me. Today, I play at the same New Orleans Jazz Festival where I once played with Bo Diddley, and when the performance ends, I lead a parade of musicians around, just like I used to do in the streets of Treme with my friends. "Where you at? Where you at?" I still keep my trombone in my hands, and I'll never let it go. So he grew up to be a famous trombone player. Now, this is a book about Trombone Shorty written by himself, so it is a true book. And in the back, like most books that are about real people and events, there's an author's note. So this author's note says, "I like to say that the city of New Orleans raised me. In Treme, music was everywhere, from church to the street to my very own house. My grandfather, Jesse Hill, was a musician. My brother James was a musician, and I wanted to be just like them. There were people always coming and going from my house, but music was a thing we had in common. No matter how tough things got, listening to music always made me feel better. When I was very young, my neighborhood friends and I would pretend that we were like the brass bands that would parade down our streets, and because we couldn't afford instruments, we really did make them out of whatever we could find. The box from a 12-pack of soda could be fastened around the neck with Mardi Gras beads to become a drum." Do you remember seeing that in the book? He had the cardboard box and the drumsticks, and pencils became drumsticks. I used to hoist a big old wheel bicycle over my shoulders and pretend it was a tuba. Empty bottles became horns and wind instruments. Thankfully, I got my first trombone when I was 4 years old, and by age 6, I was leading my own band. The only reason I succeeded as a musician was because I practiced every day. Practicing was easy to do because I loved playing music so much. I knew that if I just kept playing, good things would happen to me. I felt it in my bones. I played around town with my friends for many years, and together we tried to soak in everything we could about the incredible music traditions of New Orleans. I felt lucky that the previous generations of New Orleans musicians wanted to share their craft with me. It was my job to carry on this musical heritage. I attended New Orleans Center for Creative Arts, the NOCCA, and started to develop my own musical style. Do you remember what he called that in the book? Musical gumbo. Good job. And one that paid tribute to New Orleans' own jazz, blues, and gospel, which are other forms of music. But I also like to mix in other kinds of music that I loved, like rock and roll, funk and hip hop. I called it super funk rock. My music caught the eye of Lenny Kravitz, and at age 19, I joined the horn section of his band. This led to performing with other incredible musicians over the years, such as U2, Green Day, Eric Clapton, B.B. King, and Prince, and so many more after that. I formed my own band, Trombone, Shorty, and Orleans Avenue, and together we released 3 studio albums and even played at the Grammy Awards. In 2012, I had the honor of performing for President Barack Obama at the White House for Black History Month celebration, which is this month. In 2013, I was chosen to play the coveted closing set at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, the same festival where I performed with Bo Diddley when I was a child. As important as it is for me to carry the torch of the music of New Orleans, it is even more important for me to make sure that this tradition continues. In 2010, I launched the Trombone Shorty Foundation and Trombone Shorty Music Academy to make sure that the music and culture of New Orleans stay alive. While I've been fortunate enough to travel the world and share my music, I always return home to New Orleans. Nothing has been more inspiring to me than working with the children there. I wanted to write this book to try to inspire hope in kids who might be growing up under difficult circumstances, but who also have a dream, just like I did. I'm living proof that as long as you work hard, you can make your dreams take flight. You see that picture? That is a picture of Troy Andrews, who we know is Trombone Shorty, and right behind him, that is Bo Diddley. So that was a picture that was taken. Do you see how little he was? Remember, his mom had to lift him up? And now, right here, you can really see just how long those trombones are. And then over here is another picture of Troy, and he's parading through the streets of Trombone. Can you see? There's Troy there in the middle. And that trombone, that's so long. And all the adult musicians around him during one of the parades for Mardi Gras. And here's a picture of Troy today. So, Troy did a lot with that trombone, didn't he? Yeah, how many of you play instruments? You do? And remember, you don't have to have an instrument to be a musician. Troy and his friends made a drum out of a box. They used other things that they could to make, remember they made bottles for sounds. So if you're interested in music, see what you can make. Maybe you can start patting around on your legs. You can maybe go practice, whatever you want to do. And just like Troy, maybe you'll get your own nickname and become a world famous musician. We read that book today to celebrate Black History Month. And next week, we will come back a little bit to Valentine's Day because it will be coming up right after story time later that week. And then also, don't forget, bundle up because there are 6 more weeks of winter according to Mr. Groundhog. Thank you guys for tuning in today. If you're interested in hearing what a trombone sounds like, be sure to reach out to us. We can get you set up with some music on Hoopla, or we have music here, and maybe you will get inspired to make your own musical gumbo just like Troy did. Thank you guys. I will see you next time. Bye.